Hello, true believers. This is Joshua, and I'm here with a warning and an apology. I had an issue with my audio when recording this episode as well as our next one. I think you'll still find them intelligible, but nevertheless very echoey and hollow. I apologize as this isn't up to our usual high audio standards on this show. Bear with me for a couple of episodes, and I'll do everything I can to make sure we don't have this issue again. Thanks, and enjoy the show. You're listening in on an animated discussion about the new Batman adventures with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from the Cinematropolis.com. And today's topic is growing pains. Joshua, the biggest plot twist in this episode was the fact that based on the title, it was not a Poison Ivy episode. Because I went in, just looking at the title, I was so confident it was going to be a Poison Ivy episode. So whenever the reveal was that it wasn't Poison Ivy, I was bona fide jaw on the floor. What? This is a Clayface episode? Mind blown.
That's very fair, although we have already done Poison Ivy making fake humans out of plant monsters. So I'm glad that they went with Clayface, and yeah, that's legit. So you did not remember anything about this episode.
Joshua, one of two things happened. Either I didn't remember anything, or I legit haven't seen this episode. That's kind of where I'm at, because I was very surprised, and it did turn into a legit mystery. I seriously had, when we went into the episode and we see the giant boxy figure, I had that a flashback to one of the Poison Ivy episodes in Batman the Animated Series. Forgive me
the
for
one I was
title.
talking about.
Yeah. You're like, oh, this is another plant clone thingy, or one of them plant clone things went rogue and it's still out there or something. So that was where my head was at. And I don't actually think I would say a lot more likely than I haven't seen this episode before, so it felt extremely fresh. And I said the twist worked very well. So I just want to say, from a viewer perspective, maybe it's because my expectations, I projected certain expectations onto where the story was going to go, so that could be it. But I genuinely thought that they buried the lead pretty well. Like, I didn't feel like it was a really straightforward, like, well, yeah, that's a cute twist. It was like, oh no, this is a really surprising twist.
Yeah, okay, well, that's interesting, because I kind of never stopped thinking about this episode. This is it's definitely one of the crown jewels in my Batman is a real jerk, and I don't know why they decided to go that route in this series, because I think that really has been kind of off and on subtextual up till now, but this episode really goes hard for Batman is mean and wrong about everything. It's wild. But we're jumping ahead. Let's talk about Annie's design, since she is the big surprise and MacGuffin for this episode. She's great, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's kind of perfect.
She's got a great fashion sense. I feel like she's got a good personality, vibe. I think you noted here the choker, the boots. It all feels like it's very fashionable for like the late 90s.
Absolutely.
I feel like there's some great chemistry between her and Tim, like it feels, for a character that just shows up. And I know that was probably one of the challenges was, hey, we've got to build this relationship so that people care about it real fast, because we only got 22 minutes. I got to say, very strong impression from Annie. I feel like this is a great supporting character. And given the outcome of the episode, I'm really sad. I was like, oh man, I hope maybe she's a recurring character who shows back up, because she's got strong personality and kind of provides a little bit of, I don't say romantic tension quite, but like some sort of tension with Tim Drake, Robin, and it was good. It was a great job on the writing team, but also to the animation team for coming up with the stellar design.
Totally, and I think that there is some age appropriate romantic tension going on here. Like, they don't go too hard for it, but she obviously is, kind of cute. Like, they draw her kind of cute, and Robin is, I think, attracted to her, again, at an age-appropriate level, but A, is kind of young and doesn't know what to do with it, and B, is a good kid. So he's really just there to help her regardless. And they did have to get that across to us both visually and in dialogue very quickly. We had to care a lot real fast, or this whole thing was just not going to work at all. And instead, it works amazingly. My heart is just broken for both Annie and Tim for very different reasons. It's spectacular. The voice acting, too, we should mention. Like, I do not know this actress, but she was just... Like when she was scared, she was scared. When she was kind of having fun with Tim, she was having fun. And then at the end, it's just again, heart-wrenching. Just heart-wrenching. So yeah, A++ design on Annie.
Heart-wrenching, and I mean the way that they leave this episode off, it really feels like this the loss of this character. I mean Robin calls. I mean, I know we're jumping ahead, but he calls it murderer. So I mean, it's going to affect him. It's an impactful relationship that doesn't last long, but it really makes a strong impression, and it's going to be one I remember. Like, oh yeah, remember that time you fell in love with Clayface, and then that scene gets really weird. This also has like a very weird sci-fi vibe to it, but also still a little bit noir in there too. So quite the genre bender of the episode. Sorry, but not to jump ahead.
We have one other design thing that I think is worth talking about, and the reason I think it's worth talking about is because you and I have bagged so hard on the first season of Superman the Animated Series for putting no time into any background characters, except they'll do one. You know, they might do that.
There's always one crony.
There's
one crony that's like kind of cool, has a striking thing about him. But yeah, everyone else just...
They are fine with extremely generic gangsters or people that are just in full face masks and goggles. They're fine with it. But by God, New Batman Adventures is going to show up with some motorcycle punks that are off the chain visually. They are so good.
Man, I feel bad that these are, as far as I can tell, one-off bikers, because they definitely lick the biker part. Like, they get the strong leather, they get the spiky hair, some of them. Yeah, they definitely put some time into this. And I kind of wonder maybe if this was supposed to be like as a weird way to, I don't know, tie into the Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin is the one with the biker gang in it, right?
Oh, you're right. The movie, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. The Joel Schumacher, may he rest in peace, film Batman and Robin. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. I wonder. What I was just thinking was, I mean, we're reviewing these things concurrently. Superman season 1 and New Batman Adventure season 1. We're talking about them as though they were contemporary, but they weren't. New Batman Adventures started after the first season of Superman, and so I'm using, and we're almost at the end of the first season of Superman, so I'm using this as a reason to keep my eyes open and see if the character design in Superman season 2 steps up, because I feel like that may be what happened. You know, like they were kind of cutting their teeth on a new animation style on Superman, and you know, you didn't always get the best examples in the background or with people's secondary outfits. But then by the time Superman season 2 and the first season of New Batman Adventures come along, maybe they found their stride. My eyes are peeled, and I hope I get to say nice things about them. And the motorcycle punks gave me the hint that I might.
Well, it makes you wonder, like, if there were some budget differences there too. Maybe between maybe after Superman the Animated Series season 1. I don't know anything about this, but it makes you kind of curious because these are definitely some stronger designs for characters that are more or less throwaway characters.
We're going to throw them away. Yeah. We're never going to see these again, or even if we do, they're going to be on purpose background, like. We need a crowd, and we have a bunch of character designs.
We have bikers that we drew up. Yeah, let's use those. Yeah. But so yeah, shout out to the biker. Shout out to the great biker gang designs. They do stick out. I want to see Robin just take them all on by himself. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think that's it for new design stuff worth looking at. Let's jump into this episode, and let me say, I have some big philosophical thoughts. Like, I kind of want to talk about the big philosophical thoughts before we talk about the actual plot, because the plot is great, but I mean, it mostly, this is, like I say, this is kind of my my final thesis for Batman's not a great dude. With a good attitude in this. So let's do big philosophy first.
I got a couple of ideas there too. So I want to hear yours first, and then I'll exchange mine, because I do actually feel like in some ways we're retreading familiar ground
Sure, and I don't need to beat it to death, but I have said multiple times, we're going to get to an episode where I feel like I can plant my flag, and this is it.
And I'm not even saying bad dad. You and I can have that conversation now. I'm thinking about like the whole, like, is it living, is it not living, kind of that weird thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right away, we have a nature of existence and a nature of self conversation about Annie. Mm-hmm. Okay. Obviously, she is a different person than Clayface. Mm-hmm. When he absorbs her and Robin says that's murder, I think he's right. But at the same time, she's obviously a part of Clayface, but she's also no longer an extension of his will. It's wild. Right. There's a huge conversation here.
Huge conversation to be had there. And I think what's interesting for me is I feel like, and this actually, Josh, might set you up for where you're going with the Batman's not a great guy thesis. So I feel like for Batman, so this episode, your real POV is Robin. You're Tim Drake Robin, his eyes are a lot more open. He's still, he's fighting crime, but he's a lot more optimistic about things. Whereas Batman, I mean, we've done how many episodes of an anime discussion talking about the adventures of Batman, so he's a little more worn, a little more like weary. He's been there, done that. And this makes me think about how Batman handled Hardak and the Heart of Steel and like all of the follow-up episodes from that, right? Like, okay, obviously Hardak, bad robot thing, but there's this whole idea of like, is he killing a robot? Is the robot living? And then you obviously have the Hardak who shows up, like the one-off version of him who showed up again.
Right, the Batman duplicate, the robot Batman.
Robot Batman. And you and I had a lot of conversations like, is it living? It's got its own will, it's doing its own thing. Or is it...
And Batman's point of view seems to be that it was alive at that point.
Right. But I feel like it seems like Batman is just more tired because he's been doing it longer. So from my POV, at least, here's what one of my takeaways from the episode is, okay, Robin hasn't sorted this out yet, and Batman already has, and Batman is just tired of having to sort it out, I guess. And Robin is like, no, but this is a real person, and Batman's like, yeah, it's a real person, that's whatever, yeah. You know, I've done this before, kid.
The thing is, though, when it comes to Batman's response to Annie, he's actually extremely callous and wrong about her before he knows that there's a question of who or what she is.
Right.
Robin is very invested in this lost, orphaned girl on the street because guess what? He sees himself in her.
Oh, yeah, from the get-go.
100%. And I know that her situation is much closer to Tim's as an orphan on the street than it was to Bruce's experience as an orphan. But again, we've talked about, he keeps taking people in and becoming a father figure to them. He gets it. Like, it is inexplicable to me that Bruce does not support Robin's commitment to helping this girl, because he should recognize that Tim is seeing something in her that exists in Tim in the same way that Bruce saw something in both Dick and Tim that reflects something in Bruce. It is baffling to me. It's a choice. Like, it is not an accident of, oh, we were just trying to get someplace faster, so we wrote less dialogue than there should have been, which we talked about there being with Bruce under the fear toxin that took fear away.
And never fear,
where it was like, we're ending it and we don't have time to really go into this. The show's over. And I was like, well, I don't love it, but okay. Here you had plenty of time. And Bruce is wrong and callous from jump. And I feel like it kind of just gets worse the more we discover what's going on with Annie.
No, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. And again, I think it's interesting that, again, we're seeing this from Robin's POV. I think, and again, this is a very intentional choice. We saw them make it with Dick Grayson in the original animated series.
Yes.
And we're seeing it again here. Yeah, Never Fear is another great example of where we're seeing some not so flattering shades of Batman coming out. And and we're seeing it here. You're right. I mean, you would think that he would see that empathy, but I guess you're the question you have to ask yourself, and I mean, legit, maybe you just don't like the direction they're going with it, but like maybe it's one of those, like, the longer he does it, the less he has to give. And
that's an interesting point, actually, that I had not thought of before you said it here, and it's interesting, and we should keep our eyes open, but I'm going to point out to you that he bounces back hard as the optimistic heart of the Justice League.
Oh, yeah.
So now maybe that's a dead cat bounce of his compassion, maybe. But I mean, if we're treating this as Act 2 in the Batman of his own personal timeline, where BTAS was Act 1, this is kind of Act 2, and Justice League is Act 3.
Yeah.
And so this is the long, dark tea time of his soul. Okay, maybe, but I don't think that's what they're doing. I don't think that's what they're doing. I don't think that's textually supported watching all three of them.
I don't think that's... Okay, I'll put it this way. I think they're intentionally making a choice to make him more callous right now.
Yes.
I do not think they knew at this point, all right, so we're gonna bring him back in Justice League, and then we're gonna take him really dark in Batman Beyond. I don't think they had that. They thought that far ahead. I mean, I think they might have had conversations at this point. What would a Batman in a Justice League look like? And I know that in the Justice League cartoon, which we'll get to, they make a big emphasis on how his role in the league and the relationships he fosters with his other Justice League members do soften him and make him less callous. But you're right. It seems kind of weird because we saw him generally less callous in the animated series, and now we're here in the middle where, especially it's in particular on episodes dealing with his relationship to his family. Yeah, I don't want to say subordinates, but you know what I mean. Like he's the Batman.
Yeah, and we can't only say sons because while Barbara's not quite as much in the father-child role as Dick and Tim are, she's still in there being fathered in crime fighting, if nothing else. Like she has a good dad at home.
Yeah.
But so we can't just say sons. Yeah, I think we have to say the kids or the family.
Kids, family. I don't want to say subordinates because that sounds kind of demeaning. But I mean, the idea.
And he's not running an army. Right. He is running a family that does fight crime, but he's not just making an army of crime fighters.
Right.
Yeah. So subordinates doesn't feel right. Yeah. The kids, the family.
Yeah.
And I think Caleb, that's actually my biggest issue. I had to think really hard. It is partly, I can admit 100%, it is partly that I don't appreciate this version of Batman as much.
Sure.
And I can hang that on the fact that this is very much the jerk we got through the 90s and 2000s in the comics, which I was reading religiously, and it wore me out. But I do think in terms of this show, they often force Bruce Wayne's character out of shape in order to manufacture drama, when it does not make sense for him to make these mistakes with Tim when he has made some of these mistakes with Dick. And if Batman can't learn from his mistakes, who among us can?
Right. And I think that's where, again, these are intentional choices they're making where they've identified a flaw, but I think what we're seeing is they are comfortable saying this is a flaw of this character, at least the version they're writing. It is kind of forced sometimes, but we see it again in the animated series, and we've seen it a couple times, and this is like the second or third example in the new Batman Adventures where we see it here. And obviously when we get to Batman Beyond, we see like that how deep that goes in a lot of ways. I think it's a choice, and having this being like one of the earlier versions of my interactions with Batman, it's a choice that I'm like, it seems like it makes sense to me. That said, I can see why you would not like that choice.
And also in terms of this show, because I can separate those things, and I want to be clear that I'm separating those things. This is a version I don't love. But at the same time, I also think it's a version that doesn't entirely fit with the show that they created.
Well,
in continuity, in character continuity.
I think that, at least from what we've seen so far, I think what they've established is he's actually, despite building a Bat family, he actually is not the best parent. Like, he doesn't really know how to parent, which I can kind of see that too. Like, he didn't know how, Alfred was his father figure, I guess. But he, missing dad, maybe not the best dad.
Sure.
Afterward, So I can see that a little bit. And I think that we see enough times where him and Dick Grayson are butting heads in the animated series, and even his hesitancy to embrace Barbara and very initially, and then what we're seeing here, like I feel like it's consistent enough that I can buy it. Now, to your point, though, I would say in the animated series original, and maybe it's just because there's so many different episodes, we get to see all these different facets of the character, and we do see a Batman at times who's very empathetic and loving and supportive of the kids.
I think most of the time that we see him as less than empathetic or less than compassionate is in terms of Dick, which is not great, okay? But it does, as we've discussed, make a certain amount of sense. It is hard to watch your children grow up.
Right.
And then start treating them as equals, Anyway, so, yeah, I think I'm curious, listeners, you have now heard us. We're going to maybe try and put this one to bed because I do feel like this episode is the crown jewel of what a complete jerk
what a
Batman
jerk
is.
Yeah.
So listeners, let us know. What do you guys think? Do you think that it is more consistent or less consistent? Let us know. And let me flip it around and talk about Robin, though.
Because Robin, Tim Drake in Robin is amazing in this episode. I love that they made him the star and the pro tag. You're seeing his POV, and immediately I was struck. And you've already noted this, so don't be too repetitive, but I was immediately struck by the instant connection he has with Haney based on the fact that he sees her running away from some thugs in an alleyway. And it's a low-income part of town. She appears to be orphaned or at least missing her parents. And Tim just has a soft spot for people there. And I think, again, with her being a girl, there's a certain amount of, again, romantic-ish tension, age-appropriate romantic tension,
I think
curiosity.
You can also look at it as capital R romance, right? Like the gallant young knight saving a damsel in distress, right? I think there's a real capital R romance working on Robin there, which I'm going to be honest with you is a bit of a mixed message. Batman and Robin are clearly the heroes of the show. They are supposed to be saving people, but Robin is kind of doing some white knight business here.
Right.
So your mileage may vary. I don't have as big a problem with that in the context of this show, but it is something to keep an eye on.
It's a trope. It's a trope. I think that they're playing into. I think for Robin, it certainly makes more sense for the young, enthusiastic, up and comer Tim Drake Robin, who's still very new to this. It bothers me. If it was like they were doing Batman like this, I would probably be a little more eye rolling, annoyed, but it kind of fits where he's at. This episode really, he is the central protagonist of the episode, so that's also him, how he sees himself. So I feel like it fits pretty well. But mileage may vary. Maybe you're like, tired trope.
If you're tired of it, I understand.
I do too.
And I'm very open to hearing that I'm wrong, even accepting it in this limited dose. But yeah, so it's a thing I kind of am aware of, but it works for me here. Again, because of the character stuff and because of the specific sort of just overall context of the thing. And I do think that the episode watches differently if Annie is male. I think Tim's response to a male version of Annie would probably be 85% the same, but that 15% ain't nothing. It's a main difference.
Yeah, well, and I think there's this hint of curiosity, I think is the word I'm looking at. When I say romantic, capital R romance, and it's like a curiosity, I think, because he, when Batman shows up and says, all right, Robin, we got to go to the police station, Robin, if it was just some other boy, I'm not so sure he would be quite as keen to jump on pursuing. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but I sense that youthful curiosity sort of attraction, not necessarily even romance, sexual chemistry or anything, just more I want to know more about this person. I hate to let this go.
Living with a son who is in that I'm a brand new teenager space. It is really fascinating to watch them leave Tim in that in-between space where I do think that there is a lowercase romance going on in a little bit to him. He is attracted to Annie, but is not sure what to do with that. So he falls into the stuff that Robin does, which is save people, right? And she needs saving. So here we are. It's great. Now, my favorite thing, and I want you to say it because this is your observation and I love it so much. But Tim, in his role as Robin, is so different to Batman. His reaction to Batman is so different than Dick when Dick was in his role as Robin, and it's huge. And I missed this. You hit this, so please tell us about that.
Yes, so the thing I noticed in this that I really, really like, and it kind of highlights this is not just copy-paste Robin characteristics to new character with new name. Dick Grayson would fight about the ethics of what they were doing. There would be a big blowout or something, and then eventually he would probably go do it on his own, or Batman would begrudgingly be like, all right, I'll give you this, whatever you need to do the thing, just let's put this to bed. Whereas Tim Drake's Batman, this is really important. Batman's kid, I got Gordon's talking to me, I got other things, and Tim's no, Batman, really important, just shut up, and let me do business. And Tim's like, all right, well, I'm just going to go do the thing then since you're not listening. I'm just going to go do it since you're not listening to me. And I love it. It's great. He's got like a fire and that rebellious spirit vibe to him.
Yes.
And again, it's not that it feels like, when you look at Dick Grayson, he's more like traditional by the book, like always trying to be right.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Tim Drake is just like trying to do the right thing. And when Batman isn't helping him, he's like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. Because I'll
just do it anyway.
I don't need you to give me permission.
I really like this observation a lot because it does draw some pretty stark lines between Dick as Robin and Tim as Robin. And I do think it matters that Dick had a solid parental structure that he lost. And then Bruce came in and imposed a very different, but nonetheless parental structure on him, right? And that's what brought them to loggerheads as Dick got older. In Tim's case, he never had that solid parental structure. And so when he needed to get something done, he just went and got it done, right? So the idea that when he doesn't feel Batman is either doing the right... I mean, we saw this in Never Fear, right? When Batman's not doing the right thing, or when he's not doing the right thing hard enough, Tim's like, fine, I'll just pick up this slack. I'm on it. It's great. I really, really appreciate that observation. I think that is a thing I am going to really keep my eye on with Tim.
Yeah, and me too. Batman Adventures. And I'm super excited to see what else they do with it because this was the first episode that it really was solidified. Like it really solidified as a distinct difference. I'm interested because then like after you really start turning knowing where they take these characters and probably not like how those characteristics are in a lot of ways what lead them down the path they're gonna go ultimately in this show, like not having to wait on Batman. And I'm not saying you and I are gonna get to those bridges and have those conversations when we cross it, but it's like it really strikes me that this is a characteristic that sets Tim Drake apart. Yes. And like for better and for worse, I would say at the end of the day. Yeah.
Listen, this episode ends with the statement, sometimes there are no happy endings. That's very true for Tim, and that's as spoilery as I want to get about it until we get there. But yeah, the Tim thesis, top to bottom, seems to be established in this episode, up to and including sometimes there are no happy endings.
Sometimes there are no happy endings, and like I just think he's the guy who goes in without backup whenever he doesn't. He doesn't want to wait. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the other side of it is like he's doing the right thing, so he's able to like actually solve problems in a lot of ways faster than he would if he was waiting with Batman. The flip side is maybe he gets in over his head because he's, So again, I'm excited to see what else they do with it now that I've got this like kind of new lens in which to look at Tim Drake. So I think that was one of my favorite things about the episode outside of Annie.
No, I agree. The insight into Tim, it's not like you would have said Tim was undeveloped before this. Like we've had robust conversations about his character and his introduction and what kind of Robin he looks like he's going to be and all that stuff. But nevertheless, this feels like an episode that says, we have established him, now let us take you deeper. And it's very, very cool, again, considering we're talking about serialized after-school television.
Yeah, exactly. It's like little, like you just, someone out there when they were building this show, and again, I'm not saying they had a master plan or anything, because I don't think they had one, but there are certain choices they make that I think, and this is a testament to great storytelling, they make choices and they stick by them. And sometimes maybe you don't like the choices, but sometimes it just, even the fact that they're paying off on choices they made, whether you like the choices or not, is just really great to like. It's nice having some hindsight there and to see the intentionality being made. This wasn't just something they threw into an episode. Again, an after-school children's television show. They really gave it a lot of thought and consideration and stuck with it, down the road. Okay, Joshua, so one last thing I have to talk about. And I already sort of alluded to it when I was thinking back about the hard act thing, but I just have to say, and I've said this several times, mid to late 90s sci-fi, gosh, it's so weird. It's so weird. Just the things we were obsessed over, cloning technology and AI looking really silly. And this is another level of like that weird sci-fi. I could not talk about this episode without acknowledging how crazy it is. This is Cronenberg level screwed up that Annie, of course, ends up being, I would say, a piece of Clayface, but also her own person. The fact that Clayface comes and swallows her up and absorbs her in like a really graphic type way. I was like, this this was a live action movie and David Cronenberg had directed it, I would have been like, my skin would have been crawling for days. And so I just want to give a shout out to that, you know, like, was Annie ever real? You know, you and I say, yeah, well, she's real.
No, but
she's
I
her own
think
person.
yes.
Yeah. You know, she has enough autonomy that you're like, she was her own person. So if you go into that just like really thinking how dark this goes is, oh, she's her real person, that was then absorbed by this other creature thing in a really like twisted sort of way. Anyway, great, just stellar animation there. I love the Clayface, the Clayface design. We've already talked about it at length in Holiday Nights, but I like it here, and I like how they utilize the new animation to really up the kind of grossness factor that I don't think we ever saw with the original Clayface design.
Not to this level. I mean, we've talked about some of the horror show that he was with that amazing animation, even the first couple of times that he showed up, you know, the face change till he freaks out. I mean, but nothing to the level of, well, I'll just absorb this errant piece of me that went and became a whole other human being. It's, yeah. And again, after school serialized television that is asking our children to absorb Cronenberg body horror and also ask questions about the nature of existence. I mean, good job, I guess. Way to go,
kids watching this in the 90s probably walked away feeling very sad, I imagine. Sometimes the stories don't have a happy ending.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's probably all we have to say about this episode, but Caleb, as always, tell me about some alternative media recommendations you would make if somebody likes what's going on in Growing Pains. What should they watch, read, play, or etc.?
You know, this was actually a tough one for me, Joshua. So I've got two thoughts here. I already mentioned Cronenberg. I think we've already recommended Cronenberg's To Fly on this show, so I'm just gonna remind people that if you want to see twisted body horror that's gonna like burn disturbing imagery into your brain, then yeah, David Cronenberg's The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum, great movie. The other angle I was thinking about was kidnapping movies, and I gotta say, Joshua, I know you and I are probably gonna go more in depth on this in another animated discussion here, but I am very conflicted about kidnapping movies generally right now because they deal with usually police officers being the person solving the problem, and there's a lot of things, mixed feelings there.
Complicated. Darn complicated.
But yes. I wanted to give a shout out to a more recent one that I really liked, and it's like more like, I feel like people have heard about this movie rather than actually seen it. So it's 2017's All the Money in the World. This is the story about the billionaire John Paul Getty. Like his grandson gets kidnapped, and he's like this super rich, wealthy oil tycoon. And basically, he's like, all right. They ask for a ransom, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna pay it. My grandson's not worth the money. Like he doesn't even like pretend to care. Right. So the whole thing turns into like a negotiate. The film, like the Michelle Williams playing the mother, who's kind of caught in the middle, working with Mark Wahlberg on trying to figure out how to like negotiate a way down, and also get her dad on board with like thinking that the grandson's life was worth the trade. So this is particularly notable. Most people will probably know this is the movie that Christopher Plummer replaced Kevin Spacey within a matter of basically about 6 weeks. So kudos to this movie for doing that. So basically, long story short, they had more or less were in the final stages of post-production whenever this was 2017. So Me Too was kind of had just been made news because of all the Harvey Weinstein stuff. Kevin Spacey gets outed as a very not good person. So Ridley Scott, it was something like the movie was a Christmas movie. I think they made this call in October. Like, I'm serious. This was like October. Yes. He's like, we're going to reshoot the movie without Kevin Spacey. There were trailers that were already out there with Kevin Spacey at the center of them. And it was so wild and impressive, and I still can't believe they pulled it off, that they reshot all the scenes that had Kevin Spacey, replaced him with Christopher Plummer. And when you watch the movie, it's seamless. You would, if you didn't know that, you would have not the remotest clue that it was ever another actor. But like it again, just very impressive they did that. It's a really great kidnapping movie where maybe the victim is just as much a part of the problem as the kidnapper, I guess you could say. So that's kind of a deep pull because I think kidnapping movies can be really good. It's just a really interesting time to be thinking about kidnapping movies. So that's All the Money in the World, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Williams, and Christopher Plummer. Check it out. Joshua, what alternate media recommendations do you have for us this week?
So this is going to sound like a weird pull, I think, until I explain it. I am going to go with The Never-Ending Story.
The Never-Ending Story. Oh. Okay, sorry, had to do it.
Fantastic film. Whether its music was good or not is a question, but it's definitely catchy. You can't help but remember it. It's true. But the reason that I'm choosing The Never-Ending Story is that I feel like at its core, that is a movie whose story is a young boy with high hopes that he's more than his humble situation, who then comes to the rescue of a girl who isn't actually real. Or is she?
Dun, dun,
and
dun.
all of that just feels very on point for Tim and Annie. So yeah, so I say Never-Ending Story. It's a little conceptual and a little more thematic than plot specific, but I think that if those questions of what is reality and what is my responsibility as far as saving reality and unreality, and can I pull myself out of my humble situation through the sheer power of goodness and imagination, yeah, they just make sense together.
Not to mention the bad guy in The Never-Ending Story is literally the concept of nothingness. So it is pretty fantastic.
Absorbing things as it goes and nullifying them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very fitting.
Beautiful. That about wraps it up for this animated discussion. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on Twitter. Caleb is at CMastersTalk and I am at Joshua Unruh, and the hashtag is animated discussion. Caleb, where else can people find you?
Well, Joshua, I'm the editor-in-chief and contributor at the Cinematropolis, a website that specializes in in-depth film analysis. We publish in-depth film essays on all types of films. We also have a podcast called The Cinematic Schematic. You can find that podcast, those articles, all over at thecinematropolis.com.
Remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. Show your support by pledging at Patreon or by leaving a great review on Apple Podcasts to make it easier for more people to find us and join in the discussion.
And the links to the Patreon, Apple Podcast, our recommendations, and Twitter are all easy to find in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us for this animated discussion. And we'll be back next time to talk about the Superman the Animated Series episode, Tools of the Trade.
We'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.